In 2005, one of South Korea's largest names in music programming, Mnet, teamed up with first-generation K-pop trailblazers Shinhwa and the drink brand Coca-Cola to release the somewhat redundantly named Let's Coke Play Battle Shinhwa. The aim of the show was to search for the next big musical artist through an open audition, with the winner taking home an album deal as well as 100 million Korean won, roughly equal to around 100,000 USD. This was one of the first instances of this type of show in South Korea that would later be coined K-pop Survival, where you combined the audition process of Western equivalents like X Factor or America's Got Talent with the Korean method of producing squeaky clean boy bands and girl groups as a way of promoting Korean culture overseas and increasing South Korea's soft power. This show was one of the first of its kind, but it certainly wasn't the last. Fast forward 2 decades later and K-pop is a global phenomenon, and acts like BTS and Blackpink are household names. Meanwhile, K-pop survival shows have also gotten just a little bit more popular and larger in scale.
수능은 심각한데? 난 아무거나 가장 높은 곳에서 된다고 싶습니다.
I don't think it comes as a shock to anyone that I'm a bit of a Boys Planet fiend. I've watched the show all the way through about 6 times, and even though it's been over 2 years since it came out, at any given moment it occupies about 20% of my brain space. But there's one moment from the show I keep coming back to as truly the smartest move by any one contestant, not just in Boys Planet, not just in K-pop survival shows, but in any survival show ever, because it shows a complete understanding of why these shows are so popular. There exists a reality TV show called Boys Planet that came out back in early 2023. If you've watched any of my other videos, you might already be well aware of this. The format is relatively convoluted, but the overall aim of the show boils down to this. You have 98 male K-pop trainees hoping to be stars who compete in a series of live stages for one of 9 spots in a new boy group that aims to be similar to the great boy groups of history. As those 98 contestants perform, viewers of the show vote on who they want to stay, and eventually are whittled down through eliminations to only the most popular 9. Additionally, this show is being run by one of the big media names in South Korea and the K-pop industry. So there's a very good chance that if you make it into the group, it'll do well and launch your career as a K-pop idol. There are numerous survival shows like this in South Korea, where the end goal is to debut in a singing group. Several of the most successful ones also coming from the company who made Boys Planet, Mnet. So in many ways, this format is nothing new. In fact, Boys Planet has a sister show called Girls Planet 999 that was, give or take a few changes here or there, the exact same format. So contestants going into this show can have certain expectations of how they might do well by looking at previous examples. With that basic context all out of the way, let me ask you, what do you think is the most important factor in doing well in a show like this? Forget the fact that this is a show producing a group. Let's think more generally about survival shows. What kind of people tend to do well? In man vs nature type shows like the History Channel's Alone, it boils down to knowledge, practical skills, and fitness. In shows with a group psychology aspect like CBS's Survivor or BBC's The Traitors, you then add in social skills as one of the most important assets. All of these factors were also important in determining who did well in Boys Planet, but perhaps the most important element in any reality show, the one that I feel often goes overlooked, is giving the audience an interesting storyline, especially in a survival show where the winner is determined through audience votes, like Boys Planet was. Consider a show like ITV's very popular Love Island series. You win that show by being the couple to receive the most votes from the audience. But viewers don't always vote for the couple who seem like the best match to win. More often than not, they vote for their favourites, who are usually the couple who've had the most ups and downs, because that's what makes for interesting and entertaining television. It's essentially a popularity contest. These are all entertainment shows. If they cannot entertain their viewers, then they have failed from the premise and they will not last long in a field where TV series can be cancelled unceremoniously even if they're performing well. With this all in mind, and entertainment defined as the single most important objective, what can Boys Planet's contestants do to make themselves interesting to viewers/voters? The answer? Engage in interesting storylines. Have a sad backstory, be the underdog, subvert expectations, look like you're about to lose and then win, show some vulnerability. There's all sorts you can do. Is doing all these things intentionally a very calculated way of going about winning? Yes, absolutely. But the question then is, how badly do you want it? There is one contestant from Boys Planet who understood these truths perfectly, and using this understanding, as well as his skills in singing, rap, dance, and the social game, was eventually able to secure himself a spot in that winning top 9. This is the story of Park Gunwook, and the single sequence that demonstrates his entire genius. Let's try a bit of roleplay. Suppose it's February of 2023, and you are one of the 98 contestants on Boys Planet. The first major challenge of the series is about to begin, and people are picking teams of up to 7 people each. Each team will then put on a separate live stage performance for the first challenge, performing in front of viewers of the show and potentially fans for the first time. But not everyone gets a say in which team they end up in. The people deciding who is on what team are those who got a high number of views on their solo performances that dropped on YouTube before the first episode of the series even came out. So basically those who are most popular so far get their pick of the litter. Let's say you ranked around 42nd out of the 98 trainees. So you have almost no power over which group you end up in. But there is still hope. Because you proved your skills for singing and dancing in the preliminary stages of the contest, you've been named by the training team for the show as one of the contestants with the most potential, called All-Stars. So, you should make a very desirable team member for the people choosing, and should end up in a group with other talented members. However, as time goes on, more and more of the groups are being formed one by one, but you still haven't been called. Soon enough, you're the only All-Star not picked, and yet still, no one calls your name. At this point, you'd probably be stressed out of your mind and going in circles in your head, trying to figure out why. Did you come across as difficult to work with? Are they all afraid that you'll outshine them? But quickly, you push that line of thought aside. It's not helpful at this moment. What's done is done. Instead, you need to make the most out of this bad situation if you still want a chance of winning this show. If you get paired with a bad or boring team in the first round, it's over. That might sound like an exaggeration, but things really are that dire. Like we've said, viewers care about interesting storylines. If you're in a bad group that doesn't do well, that's sad, but it's not unexpected. And if you're really boring, the editors for the show might even cut down your screen time, so you get even less of a chance of getting fans. On top of all of this, you have a limited amount of time to make an impression on viewers before the first elimination happens. Fans will very quickly start choosing favourites because there are 98 contestants and no way anyone is memorising all of their names and faces. If the situation as it currently stands goes on, your hopes of winning the show and making it into the group will be over before they even started. You need to take control of this narrative now. What do you do? It seems like a lost cause, right? What if I told you Park Gunwook was about to execute the single most complex and advantageous gambit I have ever seen in non-fiction television? Park Gunwook says, "F it, we ball," and goes up against one of the strongest teams intentionally because he knows what an interesting storyline it is, and he has zero doubts in his ability to beat them. It's going to take a little while to break down just how many things Gunwook does here to put himself in an advantageous position, so bear with me. Step 1. Secure good team members. It's getting down to the final group forming, and Gunwook knows he's not going to get to choose his teammates. There's too many people left ahead of him who are more popular. So instead he looks at who is up next to choose. It's going to be a trainee called Yi Hwani, who is relatively well known as he was formerly in a K-pop group called Attribution, and is a pretty good vocalist. If Gunwook wants any control over which group he ends up in, that's who he needs to talk to. So he does. This might seem like an obvious solution, but I just want to point out that, to my knowledge, no other contestant thought to actually go and plead their case, either because they didn't think of it or for worry of seeming too desperate. Gunwook has no such worries. He can't afford to be prideful when he's determined to win any way he can. During a brief break where the production staff's attention is elsewhere, he walks over to Hwani and lays out his pitch for who Hwani should choose for his team. There's Hwani and himself, of course, but he also names 2 contestants who are trainees from Gunwook's label, yet to be chosen, and are both vocalists. This might seem like some sort of favoritism at first glance, but when you think about it logically, it's more likely that Gunwook named them as he is more intimately familiar with their skills and capabilities, having trained with them. He knows exactly what they'll bring to the team, and they're used to having Gunwook leading their dance practices, as was revealed in an earlier episode.
여기는 누가 주로 리드를 하나요? 제가 주로 맡고 있습니다.
It'll take less time to establish a practice schedule. And they don't get long to work on these performances, so they need to save time where they can. I couldn't find a concrete number of how many days they actually got, but based on similar instances, I think it was about a week. The final trainee Gunwook names is a rapper, who he probably chose because they already have enough vocalists. This contestant was part of one of the more memorable preliminary performances, even if he wasn't the member that stood out the most from it, and the trainers have rated him as having pretty good performance skills overall. So they got 3 vocalists and 2 rappers, which is the exact breakdown they need for the song they end up doing. Step 2, secure a good song. The way this challenge has been formatted, they can either choose to do a specific song or leave it up to chance. If they choose the first option, they would be performing Kill This Love by Blackpink, a popular song by a popular girl group. It might seem desirable at first glance, but it's also risky. Unlike the other options, which are all boy group songs, this one you would have to adjust the key of the song and the dance moves to better suit a more masculine image. You'd essentially be giving yourself more work to do. But even more worrying than that, one other group has already selected this song, and they have a ton of popular trainees. If you choose to do this song as well, you will doubtlessly be compared to them, and may struggle to measure up. Hence why no other group has chosen to do the song so far. They're intimidated. But where others see risk, Gunwook sees opportunity. The producers haven't yet revealed how all groups who left it up to chance will be assigned their songs. All they know is they'll get one of 6 options of varying concepts and genres. There's a chance if Gunwook's group pick that option that they end up with a song they don't want and that doesn't suit their group's image. But if they choose Kill This Love, they're the underdogs, the upstarts, daringly going up against the titans that everyone else avoided. So Gunwook, being the mastermind that he is and recognizing all of this instantly, chose his members with Kill This Love in mind. He feels assured, knows deep in his bones that based on his understanding of all their skills, that they can put on a really good performance at this song. He just has to convince Hwani of all this in about 2 minutes. Hwani, for his part, is very resistant to this idea.
아니 말도 안 되는 소리를 하는 거예요, 건욱이네 친구가. 저 팀은 진짜 피하고 싶었어요. 그 팀만.
Which is completely fair. Gunwook in this moment is like the Lisan al-Gaidi, who sees the very narrow way forward where no one else does. And he came up with this entire plan in like 5 minutes, while under pressure. But he eventually manages to convince Hwani by talking his ear off about it until he gives in. They're doing Kill This Love, and spoiler alert, it turns out very well for them. But before we get into that, and the performance itself, for the sake of recognizing when a choice is being deliberately made, rather than occurring due to circumstance, let's actually get to know Gunwook and his mentality a little more intimately, shall we? At the time of the show airing, Gunwook was a mere 18 years old, and yet had already been on a similar survival show once before. This show was called 야생돌, or Wild Idol, and aired on TV in Korea 2 years prior in 2021. When Gunwook was a mere 16 years old. He performed well, and often received praise from trainers on the show, making it all the way to the final round and even placing first in one of the show's missions. However, he did not make it into the final group. Gunwook's failure to debut in the show massively shaped the kind of person he was going into his second attempt, proven by an interview after Boys Planet ended on the variety show K-Star Next Door, where he explained that he went into the show with the mindset of
이번에 데뷔 못하면 난 진짜 아무것도 아니다라는 생각으로.
From what I can tell, he took 2 main lessons away from his time on Wild Idol that he put into practice in his time between the shows while he waited for his next chance to be in the spotlight. Firstly, staying in shape will give you a good foundation for activities as an idol. The show itself put a lot of emphasis on being in good physical shape to support your activities as an idol. After all, at concerts you have to perform dance number after dance number to the highest quality. Stamina is a must. And secondly, and much more importantly, he needed to have confidence in his abilities as a performer. One of the biggest pieces of feedback that he seemingly took to heart was being told by famed singer Kim Dong-wan of Nell that he didn't have enough confidence and that it affected his performance.
갖고 있는 소리 자체는 되게 매력이 있다고 저는 느꼈거든요. 목소리 톤 자체는. 우리 자신 있게 하면은 훨씬 좋게 들릴 것 같다는 생각이 들었어요.
And so, following this advice, from the jump in episode 1 of Boys Planet, he proudly calls himself an all-rounder in front of the other 98 contestants and trainers.
건욱 연습생은 주 포지션이 뭔가요?
올라운더입니다.
Which, given his proficiencies in all aspects of performance, is not just him bragging based on unfounded confidence. However, a lot of people criticized Gunwook after this episode aired, saying he was arrogant. His new brand of confidence, unfortunately, also became a pitfall that alienated him from some of the other contestants during the early stages. Where Gunwook attempted to portray his reliability, people mistook it for pride. Add in the fact that he can have a chilling glare when he wants to, and you have an individual that no one wants to mess with. And this isn't just speculation. Other trainees said as much in their interviews.
그런 사람이랑 길 가다가 마주쳐서 싸우면 어떻게 돼요? 도망가야지.
솔직히 좀 더 고아같다. 박건모 연습생 좀 무서워요. 나이 좀 어린데 근데 무서워요.
In particular, this was probably the reason he wasn't chosen when they were forming teams. Conflict among the group can kill a team's chances of success, and several people likely looked at Gunwook's demeanor and worried that in his pride he would create more problems than having someone of his skill was worth. There is very much a precedent for this on other survival shows and also within Boys Planet. Gunwook would later prove these accusations about his character very false, but that's not our focus right now. Let me instead ask you this. Even if his confidence act did border on arrogance in the first episode, what on earth are you doing on a show like this if you're not confident? Something that really annoys me personally is when contestants on these shows like to act as if they're inside a camp rock movie. Like, they're just here to level up their skills and make memories. To me, while that's certainly something you'd hope for, it should not be your main goal. I state, once again, the goals of this show are to 1. Provide entertainment for viewers, and 2. Form a successful boy group. If you as a contestant want to make it into that group, your skills should already be at a level where you can have confidence in them. Believing you'll win is half the battle, because if you don't, it'll show in your performance when you're second-guessing yourself, and that won't win you any popularity points. Someone who is overly confident is infinitely more interesting and entertaining than someone who is constantly shaking in their boots. So, he considers being an all-rounder one of his strengths, which explains his confidence in organising a team effectively. Part of being an all-rounder in the Korean idol industry, where standards are crazy high, also includes aspects that aren't immediately apparent. Not only do you need to be able to dance well, you need to be able to teach it to others. Korean society, after all, heavily emphasises the collective good taking priority over the individual. The simplest way to explain this is to show 2 conflicting phrases. In order for the team to do well, I have to do well. Or, in order for me to do well, the team has to do well. Which statement is more correct? It will likely depend on the culture you grew up in, and whether that culture is more individualistic or more communal. In South Korea, at least, the generally agreed upon correct mindset is always the latter. If you see someone falling behind, the correct thing to do is help them catch up. Because of this, on this show, if you're only ever worried about yourself and the cameras capture that and broadcast it to the audience, you'll lose favour pretty quickly. But on the flip side, if you do take charge as the leader and the group then performs very well, it reflects well on you. Whether you deem this system fair or not, there are many examples of this exact scenario playing out across many K-pop survival shows. So being an all-rounder who can teach in addition to performing is a definite plus. But Gunwook had one other main strength that he utilised well throughout the show. In the profile he filled out and submitted for Boys Planet, he revealed that his height at the time came in at 183 centimeters, or 6 foot tall. This is how he ended up receiving the nickname Giant Baby from fans for being so tall despite being one of the younger contestants in the show. This at first might seem like a weakness rather than a strength. It is, after all, often very hard for taller people to dance precisely because of the longer length of their limbs. It's just simple math that the longer the limb, the further distance it has to travel to hit the different marks. Despite this, Gunwook's actually very good at powerful dances. In fact, They're one of his strengths, in part thanks to the muscles he'd built up to give himself that good physical foundation.
사실 오히려 키 큰 거는 춤에 더 도움이 안 될 경우도 많거든요. 아, 근데 그 친구들은 다 아니더라고요. 그걸 장점을 활용해서 다 커 보이게 추더라고요.
Remember this because it will come into play later. Alright, let's jump forward in time a little bit now to the results of Gunwook's Gambit. I've been talking some mad shit about how it's the biggest brain move ever this whole video, and so far in theory, Gunwook's logic is sound. But how did it actually play out? No matter how much thought you put in, if you don't achieve the desired result, your strategy is considered a failure. Sun Tzu could have come up with as many strategies as he wanted. If they hadn't succeeded, no one would have read The Art of War. Everything looks the same to me. Well, first and foremost, Gunwook was correct to choose the song he did. It turned out the way groups who left it up to chance chose songs was also done in order of popularity, so Gunwook's group would have been choosing pretty much last if they'd gone down that road. In addition, by choosing the performance that required a smaller group, it meant each individual member got more screen time to impress fans. Okay, I know I've been going on way too long about all the setup for this performance. How was the actual performance?
Black Venom in your hair, yeah.
In a short summary, the single one from this show I've rewatched the most. Okay, maybe not the most rewatched performance, I like Jelly Pop an unhealthy amount, but definitely the most rewatched individual fan cam. Which, considering I came into this show as a Jiyoung stan, and I remained one, I was loyal, is pretty impressive. Let me play you a little clip of Gunwook talking about how they're going to be the opposing team.
일단 이게 뭔가 현장 관객 투표 큰 피지컬을 좀 살려서 큰 동작들로 약간 그런 부분은 잘 만들어내면 좋을 것 같아요.
This is where the performance shines. Because this is such a beloved song, there can be the burden of wanting to do it justice but being too afraid to make too many changes. This is sort of what happened to the other group. Their performance was probably the more well-rounded one, as you would expect from a group made up of popular trainees. But they focused more on elevating the performance through their expressions and vocals. Gunwook's team, on the other hand, relies on grit. Gunwook correctly analysed that when adapting a girl group song for a boy group, the style of dancing should be more thoroughly changed. Girl group choreographies tend to emphasise the curves of the female body through flowing moves, or the petiteness of the little girl's hands through cute little hand gestures. This isn't an absolute, but it generally holds true. Think Stacy's ASAP with the kneading hand movement, or Illit's Magnetic with the many complicated hand gestures in that one. The original Killer's Love is the same to a certain extent. It's not quite as flowy, but there's still a lot of hip action and detailed hand gestures. In direct contrast to this, the performance Gunwook puts on is a lot more sharp and powerful, which is something you tend to see more in male group choreographies. Think BTS's Fire or Stray Kids' S-Class. He's successfully made the choreography more fitting for their group's version, while also managing to play to one of his strengths, which means that he personally will stand out a lot better. And boy, did he stand out. Gunwook always has this special aura on stage that I like to call dancing like rent is due that very second. There is not a single moment when he is not locked in and putting every single iota of his focus and energy into delivering. And to give some evidence this isn't just my personal opinion, look at how the dance coaches, who themselves are renowned K-pop choreographers, react to seeing Gunwook's Kill This Love performance for the first time. Of what we see of their reactions for this round, no one else got even close to this level of praise for their dancing. The team also works harmoniously in terms of vocal and rap, so Gunwook did a good job selecting members in that regard as well. Now, he did, to a certain extent, control who got what part in this performance without taking his other members' feelings into consideration.
여준이랑 의섭이 형한테 보컬 파트를 주고
메인 보컬 못한 거에 아쉬움이 조금 있긴 했어요. 그냥 받아들였었던 것 같아요.
But to me, this comes off more as him correctly assessing who needs to play what role in order for them to succeed, rather than him being a control freak or just wanting the best part for himself. Again, it all comes down to that collective good, so generally he gets a pass from me for this behaviour. I feel like it's important to clarify at this point that I'm not saying this performance is the best one of the show. To be honest, It's not even close, which speaks more to the quality of Boys Planet thanks to the talent of the participants. I'd say in this stage, Gunwook puts on one of the top 5 ranking individual performances of the show for me, but that's more subjective. I suppose what I'm really trying to highlight is that this performance is not that of the quality of a second to last team. It's way higher, almost entirely because of Gunwook's effective management. Okay, but did they actually win though? Well, no.
원래 어떻게든 살아남는 사람이 이기는 거예요. B2B도 그렇게 버텨왔습니다.
Despite their best efforts, the other team proved more popular and received more audience votes, putting Gunwook and his teammates at a disadvantage going forward. But you want to know the most amazing part of Gunwook's strategy? It didn't matter. It didn't matter because the show editors saw the wisdom in what Gunwook was attempting and decided to include it in the episode cut, which is how we know about any of this in the first place. You've got to remember, there's no feasible way of giving each contestant on this show an equal amount of screen time without completely derailing the runtime and pacing. So back when contestants were choosing teams for this challenge, viewers only saw the first 5 get formed before the edit of the show starts to skip through them. There's 14 teams, and it would take too long to show all of them when we can just check in on them later into the preparation process and see who's with who then. The first 5 are shown to give context to how the team forming goes, and also to showcase the most popular trainees who viewers are most interested in. However, the production team then all of a sudden slows down the edit again to show one final team being formed. It's Gunwook's team. Of course it is. Because having a mastermind plan of this level is the ultimate entertaining TV. There's a reason Death Note is one of the most beloved animes of all time, and it's not because it's packed with epic action scenes. Watching the internal battle of wits of Kira versus L play out is dopamine straight to the cerebral cortex. Editing Missy here, I just did the math on how much screen time is dedicated to Gunwook's team being formed versus the other teams, and the only team that gets more screen time than them is the very first one. Gunwook and his team get a full 3 minutes and 10 seconds of uninterrupted focus. And when viewers like me watched all of this play out, Gunwook went from, another skilled trainee to someone to look out for. Compare this team's success despite not winning with the teams who picked before and after them, who won their respective battles, and it's clear as night and day. Gunwook's strategy was for the long term. While winning this challenge would have netted Gunwook's team some extra points that would have helped him out in the voting portion of the show, that's not what this challenge is actually about. What you really need is for people watching to remember you, preferably in a positive way. Those few benefit points mean nothing next to having a good narrative that will gain you a loyal and dedicated following who will vote for you day in and day out. Those points that you might gain from this challenge can't help you out in the next round if no one still knows your name. To prove this, if they'd won the challenge, each member of Gunwook's team would have received 100,000 extra points for the ranking taking place in the following week. That might be really helpful in getting through this first round, especially if your popularity ranking was on the lower end. But how many points do you need to get into the final group at the end, since that is the end goal? The answer? The lowest scoring contestant who still made it into the final group was Han Yu-jin, who placed 9th. His final score was 1,196,622 points. Just missing the cutoff in 10th place was contestant J, with 1,080,505 points. That benefit wouldn't even be the difference that gets you into the final group. If your goal is debuting, if you make it through this round only to get eliminated later on, you're only kicking the can further down the road. Those benefit points are a drop in the bucket compared to the ability to move people's hearts. And Gunwook proved he had that, and not just because he could dance powerfully. Based on everything I've told you about him, you might be thinking that Park Gunwook is a very calculating person, who is emotionally distant from others and happy to use them like pawns to further his own goals. But this isn't true at all. When his team lose the battle, Gunwook cries. But he doesn't cry for himself. He cries for his teammates, feeling sorry for letting them down when he promised he would lead them to victory.
다음에 팀으로 만나요? 꼭 이기게 해드리겠습니다. 죄송합니다.
And when several of them are later on eliminated from the show, he cries again. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Park Gunwook beyond his performance abilities and strategies is that he's a genuinely caring person. I think something often forgotten in K-pop culture is the actual meaning of the word idol. It refers to an object of worship. Whether a one-sided relationship like that is healthy is up for debate, and there's been discourse for years on how the word idol has started to be used in a derogatory sense, to refer to something as prepackaged or fake. But regardless of all that, to me, Park Gun-wook truly is an idol. Looking at everything he was able to achieve on Boys Planet, I admire the heck out of him. I aspire to be like him in my work ethic, and watching him put in the work to achieve his dreams makes me want to do the same for mine. Watching him reap the benefits of all that hard work as he's promoted with Zero Base One has truly been one of my greatest pleasures these past 2 years. I've watched a lot of K-pop survival shows. Like, this many K-pop survival shows. But none of them have stuck with me as much or for as long as Boys Planet has. And despite how long I've just gone on about him for, Gunwook was only a part of that. Every time I rewatch the final episode of this series, I end up crying at some point. Amazingly, it's at a different scene and a different contestant almost every single time. This isn't just because I'm a sap, though that's also true, but because watching what these 98 boys went through and how they became closer with each other meant something to me. While the show was airing, it meant everything to me. It's hard to put into words what exactly that something was, but I think it probably has to be hope. Despite being dropped by their labels, being considered too old for the industry, having already had it not work out once before, getting overlooked because you don't meet the beauty standards, being told that foreigners just don't win first place on these types of shows, knowing that there's no guarantee of a stable career. These people persisted and tried once more. And maybe that's why Gunwook captured my heart more than any other contestant on this show. There wasn't a single moment where he lost hope and let himself be defeated. Not when he was overlooked by his peers, not when things didn't go his way, not when his friends were eliminated and he had to go on without them. And in the end, I just hope his dream was everything he wanted it to be.
박건욱입니다.
환희요 KDS 러브팀.
나 했다.
No matter what I've said in this video, I want to get across that I have a massive respect for all 98 boys who competed in this show. It's incredibly easy for me to sit back in my chair and say, you should have done it like that. But only they will ever know how difficult the journey truly was. On screen now is a list of all the groups with members who were contestants on this show that I know of, and I strongly encourage you to check some of them out. If I've missed any, please let me know in the comments below. Is that it? Did I do it? Am I finally free? Is it over? This has taken so many months of my life.